So then we will move on to the questions submitted by you, the residents. And this first one goes out to all the candidates, and we will start, I guess, with Mr. Cusato. I'm sorry, we're going to start with Mr. Paul Pereira, actually. And this first question comes from Ms. Patty Purdy of Mineola. Do you feel the current village administration is listening to and properly representing the majority of Mineola Village residents? Please explain.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Purdy, for asking that question. Yes, I think that when I walk the village, and I've walked about 95% of the village in the last 2 months, and I've knocked on doors and I've spoken to friends and family and neighbors, that just because a few dozen people show up at a meeting and they are egged on by misinformation, by flat-out lies and numbers that do not jive with reality, at the end of the day, we are elected to make decisions, including tough decisions, and that is what we're elected to do. You entrust us to make the decisions that are best for the community. And because somebody gets up and screams louder than somebody else, that should influence. Of course we listen to our residents. We're going to listen to you on March 15th. And if the community believes that this administration and this direction and this board is not going in the right direction, that the benefits that are being afforded us now and into the future are not worth the development that we are smartly doing in our downtown area, then you get to speak. And again, everyone here has been on the board, and there have been popular decisions and not so popular decisions. We have to make the tough decisions, and I stand by every decision that I've made on the board, because I do it not only for me and for you, but for my children and your children and for the future of this village. Thank you.
That's a difficult question, because there's no absolute black and white on that. There's shades of gray. On some things, I'm sure the board listens to. On the overdevelopment that's going on in the village, obviously not. The village green in our master plan was meant to be a big park right next door to the Citibank building. I don't see anybody making a trip from any part of the village to play in front of a high-rise Queens-like left-rack city apartment building. The folks showed out in numbers on there. The folks made their point clear that this was something that we didn't want, that we should take a wait-and-see attitude. And unfortunately, it was something that the board ignored totally and went ahead and approved it anyhow. And again, without the benefit of any school tax breaks to us whatsoever. Thank you.
And now we're done, Mr. Colbert.
Thank you, Mrs. Purdy. We said here about the building, and walking the village myself, and bad knee and all, the people are asking me why? Why Mineola? Why do we have to have all 1,075 units in Mineola? What happened to New Hyde Park? What happened to Floral Park? What happened to Stewart Manor? What happened to Westbury? Why us? And I can't really answer that, because I haven't sat down with the developers. And I guess our village board has sat down with the developers, because somehow with the way in which I had said before regarding the numbers on the taxes, in which they're not paying and we are paying. In fact, we had an increase in our assessed valuation in the last 2 years of over 13.5%, and which nobody's talking about. The village board didn't talk about it until I asked about it, and it's not the forum for the board to talk about it, because that's an assessment and not a board action. So I mean, people had to go grieve, but it's out there, and the village people, residents, are not getting the benefit of the tax dollar from these premises that are being put up. And I don't know how to explain that to anybody here, other than the developers are getting the monies to put in their pocket because they're not paying the taxes, and we are paying the taxes. Thank you.
I remember when I first joined the board in 2004, one of the biggest complaints was status of the roads. So then Mayor Martins decided to grade the streets, A through D, A through F, whatever. and we started to take care of the roads. And then the big thing was status of the curbs. So we listened to you, and we took care of that. We added money on the budget to take care of the streets and the roads. And your tax rate last year only went up 0.16%, 0.16%, and took care of your roads and curbs. So we are listening to you.
Thank you. And any rebuttals, please?
To answer Mr. Colbert's question, why us? It's very simple. We're blessed with a lot of unique characteristics. We have a great location. If you put a point on Penn Station and you go 25 miles away from that, you would be hard pressed to find a location better than Mineola for this kind of transit-oriented, smart growth development. That's why us, away from our residential. And also, why us? Because Mr. Colbert initiated a master plan committee that identified these parcels as potential developments. That's why us. And I don't have time, but I'm going to get into the numbers in terms of the revenues and taxes that we are getting from these buildings when I have an opportunity.
Thank you. Any other rebuttals here?
Just to answer Mr. Colbert's question, why this village and why no other villages? In the meeting of the Executive Board of the Nassau County Village Officials Association, again, someone I mentioned before, Marvin Naddis, said as a general comment, do you believe these developers coming in here offering to make villages whole, and while they get a massive tax break on the school taxes? I can't believe this. What do they think, we're stupid? We joked about it for a while. The answer, quite frankly, is that there's no other villages willing to give out 20-year tax breaks to these developers. They fight them on it. Unfortunately, the developers see gold in their pockets and they come here to Mineola. That's not true.
Any other rebuttals? Mr. Colbert.
During the course of here, we're talking about host community benefit payments, in which the village also gets additional monies, and from the Mill Creek, the Madeira, they got $196,500 last year. This coming year it's $202,385. This coming year for the 250 property is $268,864, and income 216 is $267,619. A lot of money is coming into this village, and we shouldn't have to pay one iota of more tax, period. My thing is, I will never vote for a tax increase as long as we're getting a host community benefit agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert. We're going to keep it along. We have a lot of
So we
residents'
changed it. Before we could rebut for rebuttal, but now we can't.
We have a lot of residents' questions. We can go back and forth all night. If the question is posed to you specifically, then of course you can rebut. All right, so moving along to more resident questions, and this one is we're going to start with Mr. Werther, though it is being addressed to all candidates. So, Mr. Werther, if you are successfully elected as trustee, what would be your plan to keep our taxes low? Please be specific. And that comes from Mark Swenson of Mineola.
That's a great question, thank you. Our village taxes right now should be kept low because of all the money coming in from the community host agreement. The one thing that I tried to do with the development going on in the village is to have a positive impact on your school taxes. Unfortunately, if you look at it, the largest issue that folks have here is taxes. It's driving people out of the village. So in order to keep it low, there are various things we could do. One of them is we should look at some of the expenses that we're going through in our village. One of the areas that we quite possibly might be able to cut is in the legal area. I know that I was part of the team that was responsible for bringing on the reassessment of the entire village, which reduced our tax certiorari's a tremendous amount. So, you know, we've got to look to cut expenses. We can't look to cutting services because I like the level of services right now that I receive in the village. So if we can stop giving away tax breaks, and I hate to keep beating that dead horse, but it was a tremendous amount of money that we're giving away. And that's basically what I would do. Thank you.
The same question posed to you, Mr. Pereira.
Thank you. Obviously, as Mr. Cusato mentioned, for the last several years, as long as I've been on board, including when Mr. Werther was on the board, we had consistently low tax increases. And that will continue to the foreseeable future. So to get back to the point before, I just want to make this clear. Let's take 250 Old Country Road, for example. Forget that they built it. We were getting zero, the school was getting zero, the county was getting zero. Now, I'm not going to throw numbers out like Mr. Colbert did. Just fixate these numbers. Over 20 years, over the next 20 years, the school district will get over $12 million where they were getting zero. The village will get $2 million where they were getting zero. The village will also get $5.5 million in host community benefits agreement where they were getting zero. The village also got $3 million up front in DIB funds. And to put that building up was $1.6 million in permit fees alone. Then you take that and you extrapolate that essentially to the Modera, to the Hudson House, and to 199. Of course, those were not tax exempt properties. The only one was the Corpus Christi property, but those were either empty lots with the valuation very low, or they were 2-story, 3-story county buildings that were empty, so the taxes were very low. Folks, whether you get paid on a W-2 or a 1099, at the end of the year, you have money in your pocket to pay your bills, to fix your roads, to upgrade your pools, your parks and recreation. You call it a tax, you call it a pilot, you call it a host community benefits agreement. All that money is coming to you, and we are not digging into your pockets to fix those roads, to upgrade that pool, to update that park, and to provide the services, and Mr. Werther's right, that you have come to expect. This enables us to keep these taxes flat for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira. You've done it.
I just want to agree with Mr. Pereira, and I want to again state, in the year 2014, 2015, your taxes went up 0.31, and it dropped almost half to 0.16. So we're doing a very good job watching your money. Fast note, your assessment went up 13.5%.
Went up county-wise.
Countywide went up 0. Montana has a 0. And right now, there's inequality with the tax rate between the county and the village, because the village is now increasing your tax rate. In 2018, the county will increase your tax rate. It only can increase it by 6% a year, but it will increase your tax rate. The bottom line here is that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And if you're a senior on a fixed income, okay, and I guess I'm now a senior, and you didn't get any increase in your Social Security, but we've said now to the developer, because you can come into Mineola, and if you want to put up a $100 million building, you can go over to the IDA, and instead of paying $3 million in taxes, you can pay $680,000 in taxes. How's that sound to you? And that sounds good to me. For instance, on the green, I have an island green or whatever it is, 2nd Street and Mineola Boulevard, it only takes 3 units to pay his taxes, his pilot, for the year. 3 units, that's it. And the other 297 are all in his pocket. I know he's got other expenses, labor and things like that, but this is what I'm trying to get over to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that the developers are getting the money and you're not getting a credit on your taxes.
Yes. Start with Mr. Werther, please.
Hi, I'll try to be brief on this, but it's nice to throw out the number $2 million over 20 years or whatever. Number one, you're assuming that the guy wouldn't build it without an IDA tax break. I'm telling you right now that when somebody makes an investment and buys the property, such as when Mill Creek bought it from Palomani, or when the Lazarian brothers bought it from the MTA, that they're going to build that thing. The only thing is, how tough can you negotiate for it? Let me tell you right now, I had a conversation with the county assessor's office, 250 Old Country Road, at 70% complete is assessed at 42 million. It'll be close to 60 million by the time everything is done. That should have thrown off $3.2 million a year for the school district right now, because that project was going to be filled in no time at all. Secondly, the village would have been getting that money anyhow. And not only that, but on the Moderna, we actually gave away a parking garage that would have allowed us to have no on-street parking behind the Moderna. That would have allowed us to make a two-way street there.
Thank you, Mr. Werther.
Thank you. Yes, it would be great. We would all love it if they would come in here and they would pay full price, full taxes, full everything. Nobody up here is going to deny that. That is not the project that was in front of us. This comes from the state law through the county IDA, and they negotiate that. And as far as Mr. Werther saying that nobody else gets 20-year pilots, he should check in Great Neck, where the Lalazarians have gotten 30-year pilots. And when he came to us, we said, absolutely not. We will not tolerate a 20-year pilot. And in terms of them building it, whether or not they got the IDA, I beg to differ. I don't think they would make the investment and they would put in an office building. And Mr. Colbert said, you know, how does that sound to you? And that sounds very convincing. Well, let me ask you something. If that downtown stays the way it is now, how does that look to you?
Mr. Cusato, you have a vote.
I'm sorry?
You have a vote?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. This one comes from Carmen Festa of Mineola, and this is posed to all the candidates, and we will start with Mr. Colbert. Do you agree with, pretty sure. Do you agree with the current village policy to use incentive zone funds from developers to improve village parks and capital equipment purchases to be utilized by the Department of Public Works and other village departments?
I'd be a dope to say no. It's the incentive funds, and you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if it's been explained, you have incentive funds, you have pilots, you have host community funds, a lot of things throwing at you here tonight. The incentive funds are given, for instance, the 250 Old Country Road is 650, something like that. Mr. Pereira, is that correct?
No, it's 3.1 million.
3.1, do they have a million?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and then the Madeira is a $650,000 over 5 payments.
No, Madeira is also 3 million.
I know, yeah, but over 650 over 5 payments.
That's 250.
Whatever it is. Okay, 650, right? Okay. Now, I mean, granted, supposedly I was understanding that these incentive plans could only be used for capital projects. So what we did is we used it for the firehouse and for the fire truck and also for the park. Great use of the money. I'm really glad that they have an incentive zone. I wish it was around when I was here and as mayor. But listen, it's an asset to the village in order to get that, and it's so used by the village board. I have to give them warm fuzzies for that.
Thank you. Let's go, Mr. Cusato.
So one of my daily responsibilities is to put my granddaughters on the bus, take them off the bus, and take them to the park. And now with the new park on Emory Road, it's like 200 feet away. And so many other parents who used to go to the Herrick Shore Park and Cross Herricks are there with me. And when I see the joy in their faces, I say, you know, Paul, you did a great job in building this park with the funds that we got from the apartment houses.
Thank you. And, you know, Mr. Colbert just said something, and I just want to stop here and say that, you know, we might be bickering back and forth, but I have tremendous respect for the 3 individuals up here. They've put themselves out to represent the community. You know, Mr. Colbert, I've known for many, many years. I went to school with his daughters. Mr. Werther and I served together, and of course, Mr. Cusato and I served together as well. So at the end of the day, I think we're all friends, and we'll agree to disagree on some things. But I think Mr. Colbert just said something that, and he's right. You know, when Mr. Colbert built the library, and he built and he fixed the firehouse, and he got the new village hall, those things had to be done. And it's too bad for him that he didn't have the opportunities that we have now. And so, you know, yes, we lump him up about the 33 million and all that, but he did get things done. And as he just said now, he wishes that he had this incentive bonus funds to be able to do that. Because guess what? Then I wouldn't be here kicking his butt about 33 million for the next 10 years. And that's what we're trying to do. We're going to do those things. We are doing those things without hitting you in the pocketbook. And to give you specifics, not only have we used it for the park, we've developed a capital reserve fund for the fire truck, for the water department, for the park, and for the Department of Public Works. All of those are piggy bank. We're piggying away for things that come down the line with money that we are not allowed to lower your taxes with that money. We have to use it for, so we're going to do the things that Mr. Colbert did 15, 20 years ago, but he had to either raise taxes or borrow. We're going to be able to do those things without doing either. And these developments enable us to do that. And your kids, my kids, and hopefully my grandkids will be able to reap the benefits of the improvements that we're doing, just as we're reaping the benefits of a great library and a village hall and all the other things that Mr. Colbert did, but unfortunately had to borrow to do. We don't have to do that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Cusato, you're the reason they built that park on Emory, huh? Just kidding, just kidding. If you ever had the pleasure of looking through the arcane tome that is our budget, you'll see there are different categories and different classifications and different things in there where different dollars are allocated. By using these incentive zoning funds for parks, we could lower what we actually have to raise from taxes in those categories. So while we're saying that by law, by whatever, you can't use these things for anything but capital improvements, it still reduces the amount of money that you have to allocate to capital improvements through raising taxes. And of course, it's a great idea. Anything we can do to make our village more beautiful or better or more pleasurable for the residents is something that we definitely have to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Rebuttal.
Yes, thank you. Again, I think it's one of those things that who wouldn't take what adds up to be free money. And Mr. Werther is right. Although we are not allowed to take this money and put it into the general fund and use it to budget things, obviously, if we're spending DIB money improving these things, then we don't have to spend that same money, that dollar, your dollar, to do it through the budget. So that certainly makes sense. And it also enables us to be able to continue to increase the things that matter to you, roads, curbs, and services. By freeing up this money, we're able to each year dedicate more and more and more to those things that really aren't, pardon the expression, as sexy as a park, but are more important, like sewer and roads and curbs and water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira. And we move on to the next question. This is another submitted question. And it's for all the candidates, but we will start with Mr. Cusato. Do any of you have any plans to preserve the history of our village? And if so, what?
We're already doing that. We have a tremendous group called the Mineola Historical Society, and the president was here. Tom, I know where you, we meet Tom right there. Tom's the president of the Historical Society. They meet every month. They're doing a great job preserving our history. And actually, we're trying to maybe get a better building for these people because there's so much worth, so much, there's Mineola High School stuff there's so much history of Mineola in this building. So we are doing what we need to do.
Mr. Pereira.
Thank you. Obviously, I think most of you know that I'm a history teacher, so obviously history is important to me. And I do, if you have not had the opportunity to go to the Historical Society and go through some of these things, it's absolutely incredible. And it's too bad that it is in an area that's confined, but I certainly, on my wish list would be to move them to a bigger location or to be able to at least get those things out in public. To that end, we are doing that. We have several hundred framed photographs in Village Hall right now that we are probably weeks or maybe a month away from hanging. The Historical Society gave us those pictures. We had them professionally reproduced, and so when you come into Village Hall, pretty soon, you're going to see pictures of Mineola for the last 100 years throughout those kind of, that used to be a school, so those hallways that seem to have very little appeal to them are going to have that. We've also put up those banners that if you've taken the time to look at them, have 5 or 6 old buildings and new buildings as well, and that was done by a colleague of mine and also a resident, Gina Bongiovanni. And what I would like to do, and I've had this idea for a long time, when I go to North Shore communities and I see these signs that say, site of a Civil War camp or George Washington slept here, I would like, through the Mineola Historical Society, to do something like that where we could perhaps put a plaque, whether on the sidewalk or up, about the old Mineola Theater, or maybe the hotel where Charles Lindbergh slept, or where the first female trained to become a pilot, which is, some people say it's in Garden City, some people say it's in Mineola. Maybe she took off and landed from Mineola and landed in Garden City, I don't know. But yes, absolutely, I think maintaining our history, that's why we're all here. That's why we've been here for decades, and we raised our families here because obviously we think that tradition and history matters.
Thank you. Unfortunately, all we have left of our history are tchotchkes and photographs. That's like having a picture of a dodo bird. You can't touch it, it's not tangible. We had beautiful history when my wife and I first moved into this village. As a matter of fact, one of our first dates here was to go to the Mineola Theater. Unfortunately, we chose to walk from Andrews Road to Mineola Boulevard, and we saw Friday the 13th, one of the slasher flicks. It was the longest walk in my life going back. We need to remember our history. We have a few buildings that I would consider historic. One of them, unfortunately, is going to be torn down, the Citibank building. That's over 100 years old. We have the Boy Scout building, which is the MAA building, and the other one, the PAL building, I think it is, where the rink is. And the other thing that we've got to embrace as our history are the soldiers and service people who are living in our village. I know the Mineola High School, I believe it was, did a project where they interviewed some of the soldiers. That's something that we need to continue to do. They're not going to be around forever, and unfortunately we're losing our World War II heroes at a very, very rapid pace. If we could get their stories, how they came to Mineola, how they fought and returned to Mineola, and put it in a place of honor in our library, I think that's something that would go a far way to remember our history.
History's a very important thing. One of the things that my board did, can't take all the credit, my board did was to give over it was a gas station, is that right, Tom? Where you were, it was a gas station on Westbury Avenue, and we basically gave it to the Historical Society, which we would take care of. So many things have happened in the village of Mineola. Mineola is such a great village in which it does hold a lot of history. The Citibank building, I remember Betty Conlon, who was one of my trustees, tried with Citibank to get that to become an historical site. But Citibank, it was tough to get boxes to lease a parking spot in the back parking lot from them, but no, they wouldn't go for the historical site. Yes, I think that we should reach out to try to find a location larger than, if one is needed, get one to be larger, that historical site, because you know what, if these things, pictures and mementos and whatever are lost and ruined for some reason, we'll never get them back. So we should make every opportunity in order to help the Historical Society in order to get maybe a bigger spot. Thank you.
Just another comment?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira talked about landmarks, and I usually attend the Historical Society meets on the last Tuesday of every month. And what we're trying to do now, we're trying to put a landmark where the Motor Parkway came through Mineola. If you know the Dunkin' Donuts way down by Northern State Parkway, the Motor Parkway came in right somewhere there. So we're working on putting a landmark there. And also, if you ever get a chance to go into Madeira, there's pictures of Mineola like wallpaper, photographs. So the guys are doing a great job maintaining our history.
One thing, actually, this is an historical building also. This was a theater. Do you remember the name of it, Tom?
Williston. Used to be called the Williston.
Well, and this is, I think the Irish did a great job in this building if you take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move along to another question. Again, this is for everyone, and we will start with Mr. Pereira. If elected, what would you do if a developer proposed another housing complex in Mineola?
That's a great question, and the answer, if you've been watching the meetings, is that in November or December, the board, without, and Mr. Colbert has used the term moratorium, you can call it what you want, if you want to call it a moratorium, that's fine. We have decided that we are going to see, and this is an example of, do we hear what the residents are saying? Although we were coming to this conclusion on our own, we're going to see how these developments pan out before we were even going to hear or entertain another development. So to go back to what Mr. Colbert said earlier, that he identified 6 more parcels and we have developers doing environmental impact studies, which of course are sent to the school as well, and that triggers the whole thing and everybody is panicking. Folks, we are not going to hear any applications of these types of buildings for the foreseeable future. End of story. And I'm going to tell you right now, regardless of what the board does, I agree with what many of you have said. Let's see how this plays out. I honestly believe that this is good for our community. It's good for our business community, it is good for our residential community, and it's good for our school community. I honestly believe that. If you look at the Modera is up. It's almost full, as Mr. Werther said. The Hudson House is full. And I have not heard a complaint. I think to the contrary, it's a beautiful building. We have high-end residents who, as the term is, they call them walking wallets. These people are going to shop, eat, dry clean, get their tchotchkes on Mineola Boulevard. They are going to become an economic boom to our downtown. But to answer the question, I am not prepared for the next number of years to hear another development of this magnitude in the downtown area or anywhere.
Obviously, as a village trustee, I would have to go into any situation with an open mind. One of the things that I would fairly much guarantee is something north of the tracks. They would have to do a heck of a lot of convincing. Certainly, I would not allow them to do any type of IDA tax break unless it was tied to residency. And again, that would probably get rid of the tax break within a year. I'm particularly concerned about one parcel of land that is on First Street by Herrick's Road. It's the old Jackson Steel property. That is a huge piece of property that I had urged the board when I was on it to rezone single-family residential. It could always be changed back to commercial or to any other thing if the project made sense. But right now, we're sitting with a huge piece of property in our village, and the people go in there and buy the tax liens that are currently on it. It was a Superfund site, by the way, folks, that the EPA has said is now remediated. That could be another nightmare right in the middle of a residential area. So obviously, I would listen to what the developer would have to say. No way in the world they get 20-year tax break. The only tax break I would go for, again, is something tied to residency. Because if you think about it for a second, they don't pay sales tax as an IDA project. And again, until they have their cash flow going. And some of these, if you look at what the Modera is going for right now, a one-bedroom apartment goes as high as $3,200 a month. So no sense in making the rich richer. Let's take care of our residents here and give them a big tax break. Thank you.
Mr. Colbert?
Don't know what happened. All of a sudden, we have a study back in February of 2015 called the Evaluation of Multifamily Residential Development Capacity, Incorporated Village of Mineola, prepared for the Incorporated Village of Mineola. So here we go out, we've done another study, and it comes out with the study is 159 Harrison and 3rd Avenue, the bridge, which is a residential component, which is supposed to be the 12-story beast. 2nd Street and Main, which I had mentioned earlier. Keyspan parking lot in the front at the front and 8th Avenue, and the Winthrop Office House Complex, which is also on Front and 5th Avenue. That's a total of roughly about 550 units. I don't understand. We do a lot of studies in this village, and we don't seem to comply with them. And to say never is a very harsh term. I mean, as Mr. Werther just pointed out regarding the Jackson Steel, and I know there is an active person trying to facilitate the getting that. Broker is trying to get that. But, I'm not in favor of, right now, of any building more than 2 stories high, 3 stories high, according to the original zoning, anywheres, until we see what happens with these 4 buildings, because we also have the one over at Corpus Christi, which is supposed to add another 60 cars per hour on Willis Avenue.
Well, obviously, being on the board, I agree that we made a motion to put a somewhat of a moratorium on future buildings. I agree with Mr. Colbert. We're gonna, what the board right now is gonna stay fast and see what develops, and we're gonna have to take a hard look at what's coming down the road and make a logical decision.
We have rebuttals, yes. Mr. Colbert first?
A moratorium is for the benefit of developers. Now, here we go, we've had the developers, we got a lot of money from the developers, we give them a lot of tax credits, and as far as sales tax goes, they don't pay sales tax on a lot of their stuff, ladies and gentlemen. You go to Home Depot, you pay sales tax, they don't have to. Now, all of a sudden, the moratorium states a fact that there will be no building for a period of time, be it 6 months or a year, like Patchogue did. And they were in a big boom also for apartments, but now all of a sudden they realize that they've got to put a hold on it. So a moratorium gives a developer not to invest in anything for a period of time.
Mr. Pereira, yes.
Thank you. Since we brought up Jackson Steel, a number of months ago, I met with the mayor and Congresswoman Kathleen Rice, and I had to commend her for being very responsive to our demand, because as Mr. Werther mentioned, this actually goes back to Mr. Colbert in Tudor time and all that. You all remember that. Unfortunately, it's a very, very complicated thing. The site was a Superfund site. The EPA says it's 95% clean, but they ran out of money, so they can't clean anymore, and therefore they will not approve it for residential development. But if someone were to go in there and buy the building as is, there are certain things that they can do to mitigate, just as the Tudor time, now whatever it's called, playtime, reopened, they would have to adhere to certain air quality tests, etc. But the mayor's on top of it. Our congresswoman seems to be. We had, for the first time in I don't know how long, all the players at the table and getting all the facts straight. As far as the developments that Mr. Colbert mentioned, we can't stop developers from drawing plans and spending money. They can do all they want, but that doesn't mean that we're going to hear it or let alone approve it.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira.
I just want to clarify something. I never said build single-family houses there. I said zone it for single-family. If someone comes in and buys the tax liens on the property right now, there are certain buildings that they could build as of right. Means they don't need special privileges or special dispensation from the village. They would be commercial buildings. They could be fairly large commercial buildings. That would create a nightmare on First Street and for the residents of that neighborhood. By changing the zoning now to single-family zoning, they would have to abide by our zoning and make application to change it to whatever they want to make it. And at that point, the board can make the determination what would be good, what would fit in with the character of the neighborhood, and approve that change in zoning.
Thank you, and we're going to move on. Now, this will be our last question. We have a lot, but unfortunately, we're running low on time, so we're going to get right to this last one. And again, this is for all of the candidates, and we're going to start with Mr. Werther. To the group, what actual incentives can our local board give young people to participate in our local government processes?
I love the way our village is set up. One of the things that I would like to do is see some internships coming in, working with the high school to get kids to come in and learn the various parts of village government. I would also like to see the village officials, whether they're elected officials or whether they are people who are confidentials, reach out to the village and work with some of the schools to give direction. I know one of the toughest things in high school that I had was try to determine what course of study I wanted to take. I wound up with political science, strangely enough, with a minor in economics. But engineering is something that would be under the purview of Mr. Reedy, Freddie Boer, who, even though he's retired, is still running our water department. Could talk a little bit about the engineering in there, a life in politics. Working, and I think that was the question, correct? Working with younger children?
Yes.
Okay. And basically just, making the village more accessible and having some internships and working with kids that way. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Colbert, please.
Internship sounds reasonable. Paid internships sound a little better. I mean, I think some of the jobs we could possibly give some kids in our government. I know that we did that in the county. We'd bring some kids over at half-day school or something with BOCES, or at the school in which they would participate in actual administrative work. And maybe that could be an offering from the village. I mean, to actually to have kids also, our youngsters, to see what the actual workings of the village are. I think it's around 150, 160 full-time employees. And we have a full village. We have our water, sewer, we have highway, we have administration, we have a justice court. And so, I mean, maybe it would benefit them. I'm not looking at it just as a janitorial thing. I'm looking also as an administrative aid that might even help the student in with, they have to do bonus work for the colleges, so maybe that would help them out there too.
If I'm not mistaken, my younger daughter worked in the village hall during the summer, in the office, learning different techniques, and that's even before I was even involved with politics. So I think we're already doing things of that nature to get our kids excited about their future.
Thank you. Of course, I think this is one of those questions that we're all going to be in agreement on. I think that having our meetings on TV, having this kind of debate, having this kind of dialogue, having contested elections gets young people excited about serving the community, about politics, about our village. So that in itself, I think, will get people interested, young people interested. We also have, for a number of years, and I'm sitting next to Mr. Werther, whose two sons are Eagle Scouts. For a number of years, we've encouraged our local Boy Scouts to do their projects right here in the village. So many of the things that you may see around the village were the products of young men and women getting involved in the village. Mr. Cusato just helped out a young man, gave out these life alert packets, something like 5,000 of them. We've had people put little tags on the drainage basins. We had bat houses, believe it or not, we have bats in Mineola, we have bat houses put up. So we've had beautification of private property, public property. We also have, as Mr. Cusato mentioned, summer paid internships. When Mr. Cusato was referencing how the roads were graded A, B, C, D, we had a paid intern go around, take pictures of the curbs and the street and all of that, and then bring it back, and we would rate the village, rate the streets on that grading scale. And we have, from time to time, welcomed high school students, whether it be senior project or visits to Village Hall. And of course, I think all of us at one time or another have been asked to whether read a bingo night or participate in career day or something like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for young people to get involved, and of course we encourage them to get involved and voice their opinion. I think the national race right now, for as much of a circus as it may seem, it's really energizing. You know, I'm teaching 12-year-olds and they actually know that there's a presidential election and they know who the players are. That's exciting. Maybe, we'll see.
Okay, thank you.